Good day, ladies and gentlemen. M2 Green Tech would like to thank you for making time to see us today. We represent Ecor Cleaning.
In Tabazimbi, the residents assured us this isn't a glass of Coke, this is their drinking water, and it comes out of the taps in spurts of green. And this is what their water filters look like after 5 days. In Vaarwater, Limpopo, the water is several shades of brown. And in Middelburg, they ask how on earth they're meant to bath or drink this. But the submission that shocked us the most came from Standerton, where residents say not only is their water brown, but they also have worms in it. We heard the townsfolk were protesting, so we took a drive there.
We want clean water! We want clean water!
This year, it started on the 13th of January in the Northwest Province. A water strike in Motlotung near Brits turned violent, leaving 4 protesters dead.
Nobody should die in a democratic South Africa for water.
Figures that are required in terms of dealing with backlogs are extensive. If you look at our Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant Program, we have a budget of some 3.5 billion a year, where our requirement is in the order of 17 billion a year. So you can see what the shortfall is.
You cannot, all our findings, if you look at our findings, you'll see that we link, in relation to water and sanitation, we link what happens at the local level to the fact that provincial and national government are supposed to be also ensuring, having oversight. They're supposed to be having oversight on what is going on at the local level. You cannot say that the only time you pick up the problem is when there's a crisis, when people hit the streets. The question is, what is the responsibility, both on business and government, in terms of the regulation of wastage of water? We've heard of huge amounts of bulk water being purchased at a lower rate than households do. So business buys water at a lower rate, and then a lot of that water is wasted and then polluted. And so the issue of the regulation and the cleaning up of that water is essential.
The overwhelming consensus is that South Africa is facing a water emergency and that it's the poor who suffer the most. So the question that remains is, what will government do about it? Will it use its money and resources to resolve this crisis?
Hello and welcome to The Big Debate. I'm Sigim Gabadeli. Turn on a switch and the light comes on. Or are you one of millions of South Africans not connected to the grid? Do you struggle to pay your bill after electricity prices tripled? Is your neighborhood experiencing load shedding? Well, South Africa is building new coal-fired power stations at great expense to the taxpayer and the environment. Yet, a huge chunk of our electricity is given away at less than cost price to a few big companies. Very little power is generated by renewals such as solar. Today on The Big Debate, we ask, can we provide safe, affordable energy to all South Africans? Now, before we ask whether the government is doing enough to get electricity to all, take a look at this.
Over the past 5 years, finding a job has become increasingly difficult, and social grants have risen by less than 5%. Yet we're expected to pay 3 times more for our electricity, and that's despite frequent blackouts. The result? Protests like these in Thokoza. In Masakane Township in Mpumalanga, people's calls for electricity have fallen on deaf ears for 20 years. Ironically, the township is only a stone's throw away from the Duba power station. Gift Kubeka sent his 2 children to stay with relatives in Joburg, as life was too hard here.
Why should
Use of coal or wood are major triggers of respiratory diseases like TB. Adding to local health problems are the emissions from the power station. Every year, thousands of children lose their lives to air pollution. It costs the country 4 billion rand in healthcare. Zintle Mashaba lives in Msholozi, near Nelspruit. Most homes here are also without electricity. Her niece was killed on the 5th of September 2012 when she was playing near an illegal power connection.
kwafika umntwana wakamakhelwane wambita ukuthi ngathi bayodlala seva sebasibita vele bathi umntwana ulele phansi uma sifika samthola lela angavuki siva buhlungu kakhulu kwamanje nje vele lo mntwana akakhohlweki loyo angiba blame bomakhelwane ngokushona kwemntwana ngoba ngiyathi kuhlupheka kokuswelakala kwegesi.
Government does have a plan to solve the power shortage and get electricity to the people. South Africa is currently building 2 of the world's largest coal-fired power stations. Solar and wind farms are also going up. But Trevor Ngwane of the Soweto Electricity Crisis Committee is not impressed.
Eskom is run like a business to serve the interests of the rich, of the capitalists. That is why electricity provision benefits primarily the mine owners and also the aluminium smelters, the big companies like BH Billiton. And then Eskom attacks the poor.
South Africa could have enough electricity for all its people, but currently, industry, commerce and transport use about 3/4 of all our energy. Mining giant BHP Billiton alone consumes 5 to 10% of the country's energy, mostly for aluminium production. Yet the company pays less than 1/5 per unit of power than the price paid by the average South African household. Big industry and power stations are also major emitters of greenhouse gases. South Africa is the 11th biggest emitter in the world, and climate change is already hurting the poor through effects like drought. Doesn't it make sense to invest in cleaner power connections for all South Africans, even those in informal settlements?
Your point that you can give a lower price to a large consumer, sort of a bulk buying discount, is true. It follows the logic of getting prices right. At the same time, you get the society wrong, and you get the health care wrong, and you really get the environment wrong. We've got a massive resource curse. It comes not just from the traditions of gold mining and apartheid, or the new apartheid of platinum, but it comes from coal. And it comes from the relationships between Eskom, the government, and these big companies. So BHP Billiton, I'll just take the one that's been bandied about. The former finance minister, Derek Keys, gave them permission to take money out of the country to buy Billiton. Then they moved to Melbourne with BHP. And then he became their chief executive officer. And then the first national democratic national energy regulator, Galani Mkonazi, is now the chief executive of BHP Billiton. This is a totally corrupt.
What are you saying? Are you saying that there's a revolving
capitalism.
door between BHP and Eskom?
When we're dealing with a corrupted political system like this, we need a reboot of energy mining, what we call the minerals energy complex. We need a detox. If we live in the most unequal country in the world, and it's gotten worse since apartheid, because of pro-corporate policies adopted by this ruling party. And that means if we're going to have a change, it'll have to be to redistribute from those who are using way too much and abusing it and giving it to ordinary people and producing it very differently, not through a centralized coal-addicted company like Eskom, but through decentralized, worker-owned, community-controlled co-ops of renewable energy.
Well, what it means is the Electricity Regulation Act, as it exists at the moment, allows independent power producers access to the market. It allows them to build private power plants. It allows them to supply electricity to customers. There is now before Parliament a second amendment to the Electricity Act, which now takes those, though it places restrictions on that happening. Yeah. So IPPs now have to go through a lot more hurdles and loops in order to invest in power plants.
So what are you doing as you know, you part of that whole body of IPPs? What are you doing to be able to get into that market?
Well, what we have to do, I mean, what you know so far is that the DOE together with the Treasury ran a program of renewable energy bids. So that was one form in which IPPs could operate into the market. But renewable energy is not the solution to our crisis at the moment. We need to increase the conventional power generation because we have a deficit of possibly 5,000 megawatts at this stage. But we will have further deficits going forward unless more investment is made.
Anaerobic digestion is a promising technology offering many benefits to society. Far too often, though, this method of organic waste treatment is touted only for its ability to produce renewable energy. However, anaerobic digestion also helps improve air and water quality, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and can even be a source of job creation for local economies. Furthermore, the next generation of anaerobic digesters is at the center of a system of technologies capable of producing even greater benefits.
Digesters have been around for a while, but we've got new technology that allows us to take this to a better place economically and environmentally.
Traditional methods of dealing with the organic waste stream include sewage treatment plants, aerobic lagoons, compost yards, and landfills. However, unlike anaerobic digesters, these solutions more often than not consume rather than produce energy. Digesters come in many different designs. Some treat municipal sewage or urban food waste. Others process animal manure. In this video, we will use the example of a rural dairy-based system. But whatever their design, all digesters follow the same underlying concepts.
Anaerobic digesters are basically carbon conversion tools. They simply take the organic carbon that's inside the manure and turns it into a gaseous inorganic carbon, which is called biogas. Biogas is methane and carbon dioxide. It's the methane that we really want. We can use it for fuel or as power or electricity.
What can we do with all the rubbish that can't be recycled? It's a big question, and thankfully, one that has a really good answer. In Greater Manchester, we send it to one of our 5 MBTs. It's where residual waste is processed to make sure it's used as a resource. The operator drops piles of waste into a chute called a hopper, and this is when the mechanical stage really gets underway. The waste goes into a rotating drum, which is called a trommel or a sieve drum. It starts to turn and churn the waste to begin the breaking up process. Inside the trommel, there are a number of screens and cutters. As the waste rotates, it's torn apart and shredded further. The mechanical treatment removes iron-based metals with a magnet and other metals with an eddy current separator. They are all sent for recycling. The smaller fractions drop through the holes in the screens and go on to the next stage. And the next stage of mechanical treatment for the smaller, mainly organic fractions happens in here. Water will be added to this fraction, and specialised machines separate it even further. Light fractions, which include non-recyclable plastic and textiles, will float to the surface and be skimmed off. The heavy stuff, such as stones and grit, will sink. They are then removed and sent to be reused in the building and construction industries. Once all the fractions have been removed, a substance that's mainly organic remains. It's called slurry, and it enters the next stage of MBT, which is biological treatment. All the biogas created in the digestion tanks is pumped out and stored in this giant inflatable bubble. This biogas will now be used to fuel engines that generate enough electricity to power the MBT process and some homes. The great thing about this process is that it produces renewable energy.
Anaerobic digestion, or AD, is a fantastic option for farmers wanting to diversify into green energy. The process, which breaks down feedstocks such as animal manures, energy crops and food waste, produces a methane-rich biogas which can then be used as electricity or heat generation. What's left is an odour-free digestate which can then be used to spread on the land as fertiliser. I'm here at Ecor Farm to speak to farmer Simon Gittins about his experiences. Can you tell us about the AD plant and how much energy it's producing?
We started off at 500 kilowatts per hour, so that works out about 4 million kilowatts a year. And recently we've just upgraded it or increased the feeding so that we're now producing megawatt every hour, and we're going to be taking that up to 1,300 kilowatts, 1.3 megawatts.
Well, I think anaerobic digestion offers the opportunity to deliver a range of environmental benefits. Of course, there's the on-farm energy. The industry has been relatively slow to take off. This is a more complex technology than just putting up a wind turbine or putting some solar photovoltaics on your farm buildings. You do need operator skills, the engineering is more complex, and certainly at the sort of farm scale, the financial returns are not as rapid to come in. Nevertheless, I think there is a great opportunity in the UK to follow the route of other European member states like Germany and build an industry, both in terms of farmers being able to use the technology and also the manufacturing supply chain to support it.
Well, the system is, people say it's like a cow's stomach. It is in a little way, although a cow in a cow's room and stuff stays there for about 5 hours. In this, it stays there for about 70 days. And what we're doing is replicating the warmth and the bugs and everything else that goes on inside a digestive system. And that produces biogas. Biogas is about 55% methane, so it's effectively a weaker form of natural gas. And that runs these two engines here, which are effectively big marine diesel engines with petrol tops and a big turbo. So the gas replaces the petrol. That runs a big alternator which produces the electricity. We produce about, as I say, about 1,000 kilowatts each hour, which is enough for about 1,200 or 1,400 homes. And we use about 7 to 10% on site to run the farm and potato stores and other things, and the rest goes into the national grid and is used locally.
Farmer Lalaram lives in the city of Jaipur in the northern state of Rajasthan in India. He remembers the time when sewage contaminated groundwater in the city. Left with no alternative, farmers like Lalaram used the untreated sewage water for growing crops and vegetables. The sewage also became a health hazard in Jaipur.
Before, the sewage used to flow just like that. It used to collect in the fields. It would give rise to mosquitoes. There was a fear of epidemic and disease.
The Asian Development Bank gave financial assistance to the endeavor, which provided investments in the water supply and sewage sectors across 6 major cities in Rajasthan. As part of the project, RUIDP-1 built a state-of-the-art sewage treatment plant in Jaipur. The facility treats and cleans nearly 62.5 million liters of sewage a day. The treated water is released into channels, and farmers use it free of cost to irrigate their fields.
The water treatment plant has really helped farmers. The sludge is used in the fields, and the treated water is used for irrigation purposes to grow vegetables. I can also grow wheat.
Methane captured from the plant is also used to generate clean electricity to run the entire facility. The Jaipur municipality says this will save more than $300,000 a year in electricity cost.
It's also generating power which is used for running this plant, which helps generate government revenue by saving on electricity cost.
The treatment plant is a real one-stop shop. It transforms sewage into water for farming, harnesses alternative energy, while saving valuable electricity.
Told my kids that I was joining Durban Solid Waste. They looked at me and said, I'm going to be a dustbin man. Today, when they look at me and what I'm doing and how much they're learning about what their father is heading up, they only come with pride and passion, and they often come to my project.
Mark Wright is working on the frontier of green technology, creating electricity from trash at dumps around the South African city of Durban. And now this city of 3.5 million people is drawing power from this surprising source.
Bosasa Road landfill is probably one of the largest landfills in southern Africa. We take approximately 4,000 tons of waste per day, and a high portion of that is biodegradable waste. On that basis, the landfill gas extraction system was implemented.
For most people, dumps are a smelly necessity to modern living, but it's this gas, this smell, that contains methane.
In our case, we actively extract the landfill gas through an extraction system in the landfill and take it down to the gas compound, where we then use it as a fuel through the engines, which generate the electricity and put back into the electricity grid.
Long perforated pipes are laid in vast trenches and then covered. These hoses siphon the methane that comes off of the decomposing layers of garbage. This gas is channeled to the power generation compound. 108 cubic meters of gas an hour comes from each well, and foreign experts who visit the project are amazed at what this third world city has accomplished.
Here we are in the brain center of the whole project, and here we have the computer, which shows a very simple process that takes place. The extraction of the landfill gas diverted to the gas engines. The methane is used as the fuel to turn the engine, which generates the electricity and put back into the electricity grid. With the system that we've got here now and the current rate of gas extraction, we are currently generating enough power to supply about 5,000 to 6,000 low-cost houses.
Methane is 21 times as powerful a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. That means that saving or burning 1 ton of methane is equal to preventing 21 tons of CO2 from being released into the atmosphere. So by preventing this gas from escaping and using it to replace dirty coal power, the project is offering a major emissions reduction that, if used widely, has the power to slow climate change. These emissions reductions are called carbon credits, and the city of Durban is trying to sell these credits to help fund the project.
A developing country like South Africa is reliant on carbon trading to fund a project of this nature. A project of this nature, just on the electricity sales, due to the low cost of electricity, would not be financially feasible. Local communities and municipalities come to learn from the Durban Solid Waste and our landfill gas to electricity project and the other technologies that we implement. World Bank funding, French Development Bank funding, all part and parcel of this process.
The project is secure for now, but by getting their carbon credits approved, possibly sometime in 2010, the project will be successful far into the future, creating green landfill sites that improve the quality of life in this coastal city.
In 2010, with Eskom repeatedly increasing the cost of electricity, we had to look at options on cost savings. The cost of electricity on a wastewater treatment plant is enormous. You're looking at 8.5 megawatts of electricity that needs to be supplied, and somebody tells you it's going to go up by 20% year on year for the next 5 years, you have a problem. We then looked at what is it that we have that can basically give us the opportunity to save. In this case, we had biogas, which was a source of energy. We then decided to do a thorough investigation, understanding what's it all about, how can we basically make this a success story. We've also looked at failures across the world, particularly in South Africa, on why somebody else didn't do this. Are we crazy to try and do this? We obviously did a detailed cost analysis in terms of the payback period, the cost, and whether it would be viable to invest in this infrastructure and have a sustainable power production on the plant itself, which will then give us an opportunity to save money. Once we've refurbished the digesters, we then will be in a position to produce more biogas, because that's what you want to do. The more biogas you produce, the more electricity you can produce, and that's what we're going to do. By refurbishing the digesters, we will then be in a position to put in bigger engines, which will be 880s, and the idea is to produce almost 60% of our needs. So you take 8.8 megawatts, we want to produce 60% of that.